Friends, over the past couple of weeks, you and I have spent a lot of time slicing and dicing the 2016 Cadillac CT6. Well, 6 ways to Sunday. In that process, we have broken down the tech bits, we've driven the car in the rain, we've even met the car's chief engineer, and through that whole exercise, we've covered a lot of numbers, like 404. But one number we have yet to cover is 34. Apparently, that's how many speakers are in this Cadillac. So today we're going to do something a bit different. Today we're going to find out how a group of people from Massachusetts and Michigan go about shoehorning 34 speakers into a single car, even one the size of a Cadillac. Friends, many years ago I left the corporate world, and mainly because of PowerPoint bingo. You see, someone can put a slide in front of you and they can get it to say anything. Now, I may live currently in the California Republic, but I'm still a New Yorker at heart. So we're the kind of people that we don't believe stuff like this. You gotta prove it to me. And when you prove it to New Yorkers, you have to do so in a very graphic way. Luckily, I have a friend named Joe. And Joe is one of these engineers, and if you know engineers, they're very literal people. So when you say, really, does your car have 34 speakers? Well, Joe brings out 34 speakers. So let's count. Now, I asked for an abacus, this is the best I got, so let's start at the beginning. Now, in the front here, there is that very fancy thing that pops up when you cycle up the actual system, and that has 3 speakers in it, so let's start there. So we got 3 in total. Then there is this, which is on the dash, so that's the 4th one, and then this one here, this is in the A pillar, but it's actually not 1, it's 2, and notice it's angled, and this is how Joe can actually direct the sound throughout the car, so that's 5 in total. And then down here, it's not a subwoofer, but there's an enclosure that sits in the footwells, and that's this here. So there's actually multiple speakers. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's count those. And then of course Joe's got the amp here. And then there's another speaker here that sits in the door. Now, before we get to the back, now let's think about this. I love Joe, but Joe is a madman, but no one person can really come out with a 34 speaker system. Actually, Joe is really crazy. He rolled into Dave Leone, and you guys know Dave Leone, and said, hey, I want to put 50 speakers in your car. So you can imagine Dave's reaction to that. So, well, they got it to 34 speakers, but there was like Joe and a group of people behind Joe, in front of Joe, that basically worked to design this system and come up with all these speakers. Now let's get back to our count. So we've got another set of speakers here. Once again, they are angled for the array here, so there's 2 more. And then there's another one that goes in the door, so let's count that one here. Now, we decided to put some speakers on the roof, but the roof, well, it's glass, so you're not really going to have speakers on the roof, now are you? But these actually sit in the center console, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This would have been much easier with an abacus. And then we've got this, and this is actually why they call it Panaray. So you've got this array back here of speakers, and of course, once again, Joe and his band of merry speaker men from Massachusetts. Actually, Joe lives in Michigan, but you know, Bose is in Massachusetts. Well, we've got the speakers and we've got the amplifiers here. So 1, 2, and 3. So let's do that and go here. And then, of course, there's the other side. Now, on the other side, this is a much more graphic example, and this is the actual enclosure itself. And remember, there are 4 speakers here, so let's count that as well. And then back to the back door, there is 1, 2, and 3 here. And then once again, in the front, we've got 1 here that sits in the dashboard, and 2 angled that sit in the A pillar, which brings us to the total of 34 speakers, and what is it? I think it's 34 speakers and just a band of merry men that came up with a lot of work to do in a Cadillac.
There was some drive from the start that occurred where the team creating the CT6 really wanted to get something above and beyond anything that was out there. And that created the concept of Panaray, that created the type of approach to get the speakers throughout the car, the audio system. The objective was clear enough throughout design and engineering in the Bose team that we all came together, collaborated on how to get this done, and created a world-class system. The system configuration was a collaboration between the Bose team, Andrew Smith and his interior design team, and the subject matter experts, the engineers and packaging people who work out how to configure so many speakers into the vehicle.
So throughout this episode, I really haven't been playing a lot of music, and that's really for two reasons. Number one, no matter how good of a system you're watching this episode on, it's going to pale in comparison to what it sounds like in this car. And number two, frankly, we can't clear the music. But that does not stop me from demonstrating how you can set the whole thing up. So Cadillac Q, they've changed the processor. Now you got a faster processor, but that came in the CTS for 2016. For the CT6, what they've done is they've added this trackpad. So I can actually go in with the trackpad and change some of the settings of the Panaray system. So if I go into the menu here, I go to tone settings, it's way more than just bass, mid-range, treble, and surround. Notice what I get. I can go through and I can go to presets of the surround. So right now I've got it on driver, but then let's say for the sake of discussion, I've got people in the car with me. I can go to the center point here, but then let's say for the sake of discussion that you're actually going to be chauffeur driving this car, you're actually going to have someone in the back, or the owner of the car is going to be sitting in the back, then you can actually set that to focus onto the rear. And then, of course, like the factory setting is just go to normal. Now, there is one other setting here. You can actually go through and manually change this stuff here. So I can change where the sound is focused based on wherever I want it to be. Let's say, for the sake of discussion, the center of just the front, I can move that with the arrow up. Or if I want to center rear, I just move that with the arrow in the back. Now, yes, you can still make the adjustments by just going to the screen itself and playing around with the screen itself, but it's really not that intuitive to actually have to look here and point your finger here. With the trackpad, it's so much easier because you're not reaching over there. And this is the reason why you want a faster processor in Cadillac Q. Think of this as an application that sits on top of the OS, and now you actually have a function that you want to play around with, and frankly, the faster processor makes it much easier for, think of this as like a developer. Bose can now play around and manipulate the audio system through this UI. So tuning an audio system has everything to do with speakers and amplifiers and fancy wiring, right? Well, actually, not so right. So we already learned in the full first drive review episode of this car that Cadillac elected to use both aluminum and high-strength steel in the construction method of the CT6. And the main focus there was lightweight, thus affecting driving dynamics. But when you're tuning an audio system, there actually is a side benefit in using different types of materials. Like, for example, the floor. This is where you'd have a lot of noise transfer because you get a lot of road noise through here. And riddle me this, aluminum, while it is stronger and lighter, it actually does get more road noise through it. So Cadillac, not Bose, Cadillac elected to put high-strength steel in the floor, thus lowering the actual noise input or noise transfer from the road, and that, by design, or really kind of side design, affects the tuning of the audio system.
So how do we get to a point where we're putting 34 speakers into a Cadillac? The first program that I worked on when I worked at Bose, when I had hair down to here and a goatee, was the 1998 Cadillac S5S. It was our first amplifier that was network connected to the bus in the car. It was the first amplifier that we used DSP, signal processing chips, to do the equalization tuning. And if I recall correctly, it's the only time we ever used the dual cube cricket transducer or speaker across the dash of a car. So, of course, we can feel Joe's pain for all the work that he put into this car. And I really appreciate it because that's the kind of pain that I put in back in the late 90s. We didn't stop there. back in 2005, Cadillac came to us again and said, we're going to revamp the STS. And of course, that's when we introduced the studio surround system, where we actually started using speakers in the seat back to enhance the surround sound in the car. And at that culmination of over 30 years of experience working together helps us get to a system where we're putting 34 speakers into a car like the new CT6.
So yes, a lot of design and engineering in a collaborative fashion between two well-known companies that have core competencies in their respective areas of focus created this. And this, at the end of the day, is a product. And that's a product that both companies want to sell. And they did an interesting thing here. So the car we've been driving here in a very wet California, thanks to El Nino, is like the super double fancy like platinum model that has the ultra suede interior, the fancy sunroof, even massaging seats. This one has Panaray fitted as standard, but this one also is like $86,000. But then they kind of took a page out of the book of some of the European manufacturers where they decoupled the Panaray system from the Platinum car. So you can add the Panaray system. So you and I spend a lot of time talking about design, and I feel as of late we've been focusing on the design of speaker grills, kind of like it's the new frontier in very fancy cars. But now we have a unique opportunity in that basically a speaker system has thrown up on this very fancy car. So we can kind of get a better understanding of what actually happens behind the speaker grills. And really, when you think about it, basically these systems have been in cars like these, I want to say for the past like 30 years. And just as like kind of like a side note question here, what was the first car to have a non-OEM, meaning a branded system in their car from the factory? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to this. So this is more than just putting fancy speaker grills in there. It's actually focusing where the sound goes and how you hear things. And from what I understand, it's all about imaging and clarity these days. And let's start with the A-pillar. So we've got this array here, and it's two speakers, but notice it's not like arbitrarily flat in the car. They're actually pointed in two different directions. So this top one here focuses over to the other A-pillar, which I'll admit is somewhat confusing to me, but the whole idea is it adds imaging. So think of it as hearing where the instrument, and that could be a voice, where it was supposed to be from the original recording. And then this one here, notice it shoots across into the passenger from this side, and on that side to the driver, and that's the clarity. But wait, there's more. This is the center channel, and this is specifically a mid-range here. I wasn't really going to go through all 29 other speakers here. I have 5 or 6, whatever it is over here. This center channel here, it shoots directly down this, obviously the center of the car, and the idea here is to be very focused in the sound. And again, instead of just putting a fancy like pop-up speaker, it's like, what are you going to do with that sound? And this, again, from the recording, where is the sound supposed to be? Now this works in conjunction with another mid-range here. So there's basically two. There's one on this side and one on that side. And this effectively works together in the front for imaging, clarity, and direction.
For many years, it's really been focused on delivering great sound quality in the car. And that's really been, the primary focus of a high-end audio system. Going forward, it's going to be so much more than that. Of course, sound quality is going to be really important, and we'll have to continue to bring innovation to delivering sound quality. But it's going to go well beyond that. It's going to include industrial design of how beautiful you make the system look in the car that enhances the experience. It's going to be about bringing technologies from other parts of our business, and being able to share those stories about how we put things like articulated arrays into this system, like we do in our professional systems that we call Panaray. And of course, there will be other things that will help personalize the experience in the car, some of which we may not even know what's capable or what's possible right now. And those are the types of things that we're working on now to take forward into the next generation of these systems.
So in summary, what do we got? Well, other than Joe and his band of merry speakermen being perhaps just a bit overboard with their jobs, we had a very unique glimpse here. And really, this is something you and I have been kind of working up to for the past couple of years. How many Cadillacs have you and I driven on like closed public roads, on racetracks, and really gotten to know the people that have built these cars? Dave, Eric, Bob, Travis, all these guys behind these cars over the past couple of years. Well, here's the first instance where you and I got to see the other side of the fence, where you got a supplier that has been working with a company like Cadillac for years, but it's more than just, hey, why don't you come by and work on a product and we'll put a fancy speaker system in our car that'll come out next year. This was, hey, we're thinking about building a car and maybe we'll come up with something in 5 years. So with that, I want to leave you guys with a question. And this is more about kind of like, where would you want to see this go? So here's an instance where it has 34 speakers, and we already talked about Joe and his band of merry speakermen. They wanted 50 speakers in the car. So in your like perfect mythical world, in your fancy brand new luxury car, how many speakers would you want? And where would you want to hide them? And just don't tell me how many and where you want to hide them. Tell me what region of the world you hail from, and also what car do you drive? And you know what, for good measure, what music do you like to listen to get your jam on? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you guys with two things. Number one, make sure you check out our full first drive review of the Cadillac CT6. And number two, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which I had a hand in designing, and I promise you, doesn't have a one speaker to it. You can download it for free at Apple iTunes or Google Play. And until I see you next time with most likely a car with a lot less speakers, bis später.